If you have an aquarium at home right now, and you bought that fish from a chain pet store, I have some bad news for you. That fish will probably grow too large for that tank, or it already has, and you think that's just normal. Because when you walk through the fish section at PetSmart, some of the fish look completely harmless, small, colorful. Some of them even have labels nearby that say things like beginner friendly. But here's the strange part. The day you buy that fish, you might not actually be buying a small aquarium fish. Sometimes what you're buying is an animal that will outgrow your tank within a few years. Sometimes it's a species that will start hunting the other fish in there. Today I'm going to walk you through PetSmart's fish section, but not through the eyes of a customer, through the eyes of a biologist. Because the labels on those tanks aren't telling you the truth. That little card that says, small aquarium fish, is sometimes a flat-out lie. In this video, I'm going to warn you about 4 different traps. The first is the size lie. Species sold small that grow enormous. The second is hidden aggression. Species that silently eliminate their tank mates. The third is the water chemistry trap. Species that are slowly poisoned in ordinary tap water. The fourth is the most controversial, genetically modified species. When you get to number 7 on this list, you'll probably look over at your own tank, because that fish is one of the most returned and most abandoned species in the United States. And I've saved the most shocking piece of information for the exact middle of the video. You'll see a fish that's banned from sale in some states, but is still sitting on shelves in others. One more thing I should say up front. Most of the 10 species you'll see in this video aren't bad fish. The problem is never always the fish itself. The problem is that these fish are sometimes sold to the wrong person for the wrong tank with the wrong expectations. Ready? We're starting from the bottom of the list. The red-tailed shark. The name has shark in it, but it's not an actual shark. It's a member of the carp family. In the wild, it lives in Thailand's Chao Phraya River basin, and its wild population has declined to near nothing. But here's where the trouble begins. This fish is intensely territorial. It cannot tolerate the presence of another of its own kind. Put 2 red-tailed sharks in the same tank, and one will attack the other without stopping until one of them is dead. There is no label at PetSmart warning you about this. When you see a red-tailed shark at the store that's 1.5 inches long, none of this is obvious. It's small, fast, and visually striking. That bright red tail against the black body is incredibly appealing. But once it's in your aquarium, the story can change. Because this fish doesn't just need space to swim, it needs space to establish its own territory. Adult size reaches up to 6 inches, and it needs a minimum of about 55 gallons. Without a cave of its own and open swimming room, it secretes stress hormones constantly. In a standard small beginner tank, this fish enters chronic stress, its immune system collapses, and it typically dies of disease before hitting the 6-month mark. The fish at the pet store doesn't tell you, I'm going to be the boss of this tank eventually. You only find that out after you've brought it home. The Chinese algae eater. The name alone does most of the sales pitch for you. Algae eater. And when it's young, it genuinely does feed on algae in the aquarium. Got algae on the glass? Pick up one of these. Problem solved. That's the thinking. But there's one very important detail here. This fish's behavior changes completely as it ages. Its mouth evolved to suction onto glass and surfaces. As the fish matures, it abandons algae eating and develops a different behavior instead. It begins latching onto the sides of other fish, particularly flat-bodied species, and feeding on their slime coat. This causes serious skin damage to the targeted fish and opens the door to secondary fungal infections. There's a real story I came across on an aquarium forum. A user from Ohio noticed that the algae cleaner they'd bought from PetSmart 2 years earlier had completely destroyed the dorsal fin of their favorite goldfish overnight. They had to separate the fish immediately. This species can also grow up to 10 inches. That innocent-looking 1.5-inch juvenile at PetSmart can become the most dangerous occupant of your tank within 3 years. And one of the most dangerous sentences in the aquarium hobby is this: it fits for now. The fish grows, the tank doesn't. A few months later, the problem is no longer the fish's health, it's figuring out where to put the fish. The common Pleco, sold at PetSmart as a cute, armored 1.5-inch catfish. But in the wild, in the Amazon basin, this fish can grow up to 2 feet long. That's right, 2 feet. A standard small tank can't even properly support the spinal structure of this fish as an adult. The daily waste production of an adult common Pleco is enough to single-handedly collapse the nitrogen cycle of a small tank. Many people think, this fish cleans the glass on my aquarium. And that's exactly the problem. Viewing this fish as nothing more than a glass cleaner means ignoring its real needs entirely. A large fish doesn't produce the same amount of waste as a small fish. The animal you bought to clean the glass can end up placing an enormous additional burden on the tank's filtration system before long. But the real problem isn't that this is a bad fish. In the right tank, under the right conditions, it can be excellent. Number 7. The iridescent shark. Not actually a shark at all. It's a giant species of catfish. In the Mekong River, it can grow up to 5 feet and exceed 90 pounds. At PetSmart, it's sold as a 2-inch silver shimmery fish. No label tells you it'll exceed 2 feet in length within a year. This species lives in schools. Kept alone, it enters chronic stress, continuously crashes into the tank walls, and injures itself. Most of the large aquarium rescue centers in the United States report that the majority of their oversized fish surrender requests involve this species. The fact that a fish can physically fit inside a tank does not mean that tank is appropriate for it. The tinfoil barb and the silver dollar. These two species share the same mistake, the schooling lie. Both of them never live alone in nature. They move in groups of at minimum 6 to 8 individuals. This isn't just a social preference, it's a survival strategy. But at PetSmart, usually only 1 or 2 of these fish get purchased because the customer isn't calculating how many will fit in their tank. The tinfoil barb reaches 14 inches at adulthood, and a school of 6 requires a minimum of about 125 gallons. In most homes, that's more floor space than a piece of furniture. This brings us to one of the most important rules in the aquarium hobby. The price of a fish is not its real cost. The fish itself might be cheap, but the right tank, the filter, the heater, the decor, the water changes, the food, and the space it'll need once it reaches adult size, all of these are part of the real cost. Sometimes the most expensive fish is the one that looked cheapest when you bought it. And the most tragic thing about the tinfoil barb is that it looks active even under poor conditions. A stressed fish doesn't always sit motionless in a corner. Sometimes constant swimming is itself a sign of stress. Fancy goldfish, but in tropical tanks. This entry is different from the others because the mistake isn't in the species itself, it's in how it's sold. Goldfish are cold water fish. Their ideal temperature range is around 64 to 72 degrees Fahrenheit, but in pet stores they're typically displayed in heated tropical tanks running at 77 to 82 degrees Fahrenheit alongside tropical fish. It's easy to forget that the store tank is a temporary sales environment. The home aquarium is where the fish will live for years. This incorrect temperature artificially accelerates the goldfish's metabolism. In the short term, it makes them look more lively, but long term, it leads to metabolic fatigue, premature aging, and immune collapse. Goldfish also produce waste at up to 3% of their body weight per day, among the highest ammonia producers of any ornamental fish. In a standard beginner kit tank, this can lead to a lethal ammonia spike within 2 weeks. Now I'm going to tell you something most YouTube videos don't cover. GloFish, genetically modified, fluorescent-colored zebrafish and tetra species. These are not natural fish. Fluorescent protein genes taken from jellyfish and coral were injected into zebrafish embryos in a laboratory setting. The original purpose was to develop biosensors for pollution detection, but in 2003 they were introduced to the commercial aquarium market. Here's the part you probably didn't know. In the state of California, the sale of these fish is still banned due to the risk of genetically modified organisms escaping into the environment. But in other states, they continue to be sold freely on PetSmart shelves. Something else worth saying clearly. There are many claims circulating online about GloFish, and not all of them are equally supported by science. Presenting things like they have shorter lifespans as established fact would be inaccurate. This is still debated, and solid long-term data is limited. But the debate itself matters. Purchasing a genetically modified organism as a pet is a different kind of decision than buying a standard color variety. The fact that a product is available in a store doesn't mean you have no reason to learn about its biological or legal background. Oscar fish, one of the most intelligent members of the cichlid family. It recognizes its owner, can take food from the hand, and some researchers report it demonstrates basic problem-solving ability. But at PetSmart, it's sold as an innocent 1.5-inch juvenile. A baby Oscar is genuinely compelling. Big eyes, active behavior, striking markings. When you see one in the store, it's very easy to think, I can keep this in my aquarium. But which aquarium? That's the real question. An adult Oscar reaches 12 to 14 inches and is an intensely aggressive, territorial species. Its obsessive digging behavior means it constantly rearranges tank decor, uproots established plants, and shoves rocks around. The minimum tank size for a single Oscar is about 75 gallons. Keeping this fish in a small beginner tank is a level of cruelty comparable to locking a puppy in a closet. The Oscar can be a genuinely impressive pet, but that's exactly what makes keeping it in the wrong tank even more unfortunate.
Betta Splendens, the Siamese fighting fish, sold individually in small plastic cups. This image has become so normalized that nobody questions it anymore. But the biological reality is this. A betta is typically kept in that cup for weeks, sometimes months. Water changes are irregular, filtration is zero, temperature is uncontrolled. In the wild, bettas live in the shallow, slow-moving rice paddies and wetlands of Thailand. The water is small in volume but not stagnant. Constant rainfall and flow keeps it refreshed and oxygenated. The water in a pet store cup, by contrast, sits still for days, accumulating ammonia. The betta's labyrinth organ allows it to breathe atmospheric oxygen directly, which keeps it alive under these conditions, but not healthy. Those are two different things. When a betta sits motionless in a cup, looking half dead, it has actually entered a survival mode, reducing its metabolism to a minimum. And here's the wrong conclusion people have been drawing for years. Bettas don't need a filter, don't need a large tank. They can live in a small jar. No, they can survive in a small container. That is not the same thing. Perhaps the greatest irony on this entire list is here. A betta can actually be a more appropriate choice for a small aquarium than several other fish, but confusing the word small with the word cup is where the whole problem begins.
Now let's come back to the question from the beginning of the video. Should these fish being sold at PetSmart actually not be sold there? The answer isn't as simple as you might think, because a fish being in a store doesn't automatically mean it's a bad fish. The red-tailed shark can be excellent in the right tank. The Pleco can be impressive in the right-sized system. The Oscar can be an incredibly interesting pet for an experienced hobbyist. And the Betta, in an appropriate aquarium, can be a small but deeply fascinating fish. So the real issue isn't, should this fish be sold? The real question is this fish being sold with its actual needs explained to the person buying it? When that information isn't provided, the problem isn't between the fish and the customer. It's between the system and the customer. The next time you go to a pet store, before you put a fish in your cart, ask just 5 questions. Question 1. How large will this fish be as an adult? Don't look at its current size. Look at its adult size. Question 2. Does this fish need to be kept alone, in a pair, or in a group? If a group is required, don't look at the price of one fish. Look at the cost of the full group and the tank that goes with it. Question 3. What temperature and water conditions does this fish need to stay healthy? pH, temperature, ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, all of it matters. Question 4. When this fish grows up, will it be able to live with the other fish already in my tank? A fish that's small and calm today can become territorial or aggressive tomorrow. Question 5, and maybe the most important, am I actually prepared for what this fish will look like as an adult? If the answer is no, not buying the fish isn't failure. It's proof that you'd be a responsible fish keeper. If any of the fish in this video are in your tank right now, don't panic. Don't try to immediately get rid of it. First, find out its adult size. Check its water requirements. Observe its behavior. Assess your tank's capacity. With the right information, many problems can be solved before they fully develop. Before you buy a fish, think of it this way. You're not just buying who that fish is today. You're buying its entire life. Because the moment that small, adorable fish leaves the store, it's no longer a product. It's a living creature. And its future begins with the decision you make today. If you've already made one of these mistakes, the next video shows you how to rescue your tank.